item of business is to look for additions, deletions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additional agenda as presented?
So moved.
Support.
Support again. Last chance. Any corrections, comments? Okay, all those in favor, thumbs up or aye.
Aye.
Opposed, be thumbs down and a nay. Looks like it's passed. Thank you very much. Next up would be roll call. Sarah, I believe that's you.
Yes, thank
Please.
you. And just to remind everyone, we need your location as well as you're here. So Mayor Mapes, would you start, please?
Present in Elma, Michigan.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harrington,
Present in Alma, Michigan.
Commissioner Allman,
Present in Alma, Michigan.
Commissioner Piccolo,
Present, Storm Lake, Iowa.
Commissioner Pitts,
Present, Alma, Michigan.
Commissioner Stahl,
Present in Elma, Michigan.
and Commissioner Warnick.
Present in Alma, Michigan.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Next, we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. If we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next up is we'll move down to hearings, I guess. We need to set a public hearing for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the agenda will allow, to consider the final 2018 Special Assessment District Rule, number 4, for the construction of sanitary sewer leads on Hannah Avenue. Your pleasure.
Greg, do we have to approve the minutes first?
Oh, yes, I skipped that. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
I guess I was in a hurry. It's too nice out. My apologies. So
I moved to
we'll
approve
entertain a
the
motion.
minutes.
I'm sorry.
Support.
Well, it's Michelle.
I said I moved to approve the work session and regular meeting minutes, please.
Okay. We have a
Support.
motion, and you got support as well, Sarah?
Yes, thank you.
Any additions, comments, corrections on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, be an aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate that. Now we'll move down to hearings and set a public hearing for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter, as the agenda will allow, to consider the final 2018 Special Assessment District Rule number 4 for the construction of sanitary sewer leads on Hannah Avenue. Now, your pleasure for this item.
Move to set the hearing.
Support.
I have a motion and support. Are there any comments or questions or anything from staff? Pretty routine. Nothing new there, Dave?
Yeah, this is to set the final assessment rules for the actual constructed for the sanitary sewer laterals. Will not that how long the people will have to pay on those.
Okay, Dave on that. Hearing none. Those in favor of setting the hearing would be an aye.
Hi.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving down, we need to set a public hearing for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 at 6:05 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the agenda will allow, to consider the final 2019 Special Assessment District Rule number 1 for the construction of sanitary sewer leads on Hayes Avenue. Your pleasure.
Move to set the hearing.
Support.
We have a motion to support. Are there any comments or questions? David, any comments from you?
Same thing as mentioned before. This will set the final sanitary sewer lead amounts as far as lineal footages and the costs for the folks that live on that own property or have houses along Hayes Avenue. That'll kind of be the theme for the next month and a half. Sarah and I were talking about that last week. We've got a number of SADs coming up for the next month and a half, either to set and to close out. The reason you see the 2018s for both of these, or actually one of them and then 19, I was trying to hold off last year because I was trying not to do these via Zoom, but we're getting long enough in here. I don't want to keep these on the books for very much longer. So if we do a hybrid method, that's fine, but I just didn't want people to think we were trying to set these behind the scenes and make it problematic and difficult if they didn't have access via Zoom. So Maybe we'll be at a hybrid method. As much as I don't want to be the first guinea pig to try the new technology in the commission room, that may be the case. But it's time to put a few of these to bed, and then I can't push any of these other ones off in the future as far as setting for the new SADs that need to come up for Francisco and Iowa. That'll be coming up as well.
Okay.
That was going to be my either question or comment, is how are we planning on doing this? If there's any chance of us doing it inside and not, or outside, but actual live contact with people, that would be better. These meetings generally have a large population of people that at them.
Especially with the sidewalk one coming up. Those ones will tend to bring most people out. The sanitary sewer ones will be questions. I'm hoping that a number of people reach out to me ahead of time and I can meet with them at their location or on site to explain some of that, because we just do get a lot of general questions for these types of meetings. But at the same time, I'm trying to make them as accessible as they can be.
Yeah.
Guys, I do have a point on that on my newsletter that we need to talk about a little bit about where we might be going with our next meetings as things are changing. So,
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? And just a note, Dave, the regular mailings will go out to notice every one of these hearings, and so they'll get all the paperwork that they normally do.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. All the information that the commissioners will have, they will have, and it'll have their exact amounts and their footages. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I believe we had a motion to support. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Looks like that motion is passed as well. Thank you. Moving on down to request for purchase, we need to consider a resolution to approve a request for purchase to Crouch Communications in the amount of $13,586.50 for the police equipment upfit of a new police interceptor utility vehicle, which was purchased in 2020. Your pleasure here.
Move approval.
Support.
Motion and support. Great. Is there any comments or questions?
this is just the standard, and this is the cost that it's starting to be when you upfit from the vehicle that you get to the one that you end up with that's on the road. So all the lights and bars and everything that go inside.
And this is all new, right? There's nothing we can reuse from an old vehicle. Is that because of the change in
Correct. This
model?
is all the new SUVs that we're now using. And to be honest, every model year now there is very little that you get to use again anymore.
Oh, how nice.
Half the price of another car.
Yeah, approaching it anyway. Anybody else? Okay, I believe we had a motion to support, so all those in favor would be an aye.
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 Those opposed, thumbs down and a nay. Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we move to consider for the Francesco Avenue sanitary sewer upgrade and award the project to the recommended bidder. We have, looks like 5 bids that were received on March 17, 2021, ranging from $526,376.45 all the way up to $729,336.85. The recommended bidder is the low bidder, which came from Ward's Excavating LLC of St. Louis, Michigan. So your pleasure on this item.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, I heard a motion in support. Comments or questions? Dave, do you have some background?
Yep. This is for the upgrade and upsize of the sanitary sewer that's on Francisco from Michigan Avenue to the north dead end. The reason why this is a project size, that line, get ahead of, if you remember me talking in the last year or two about trying to abandon the sanitary sewer that runs to the north of, I call it where the nuns are at, trying to get off of that river edge. But we can't do that until we upsize that sanitary sewer line on Francisco. And another reason for that is if there's any development on the east side of town for that property that we've talked about where the houses have been demoed, we have to upgrade the size of the sanitary to allow for any kind of industry there to help facilitate that. The next step will be to install a lift station along King Park, and that will get us to truly abandon that sanitary sewer that's north of, on the north side of Michigan Avenue. That is the time bomb that we'd like to avoid. If you remember, a number of you commissioners have been on here for a while. You've heard about this for a number of years. So this is the first phase in getting rid of that.
Yes, we have. Thank you, Dave. So when is the lift station scheduled? Is that next year?
I've got it forecast out for, I believe, 2 years out, but we can bump that up, and that's a part of the discussions on that. But that's about $1 million project we're estimating right now, but this sewer will be upsized to take any material from that lift station once that gets installed.
But the downside is if we have a failure, and along that
Yes.
line, we could have a multi-million-dollar problem. But
You're precisely right. Absolutely right. Yes.
This is a very critical piece of the infrastructure here, of getting
Yeah.
this thing.
Yes. It
worked
serves
back
two
out.
functions of it, but yes, that is something that's very, very next moving up on the agenda as far as other items over at the wastewater plant as well.
Dave, I thought, if my memory serves me right, the upgrade to get rid of that sewer that's back on the river, behind the nuns there, involved doing something with the Pine Avenue. The reason that we've been stalling on the repaving of Pine Avenue is because the sewer was going under there. Is that not on the table anymore?
Yes, that's on the table. That's not a part of the Francesco project or that sanitary sewer. That's a separate sanitary issue. That one is that there is some elevation issues that are on that sanitary sewer that are on Pine Avenue. And because of the way the state road funding has not worked in our favor, we went from an every 3 years. Now it's bumped to every 6, which I still, it's where it's at now. So that's where it's held off on the Pine Avenue project. But yes, that one too is within either this year or next year, because I would like to get that done sooner than later as well. I would not call it as critical. The criticality on that is getting that done before Pine Avenue reconstruction occurs, so that once Pine Avenue fixes that elevation problem, now it can gravity feed and go to the plant. And that'll also help with some inflow and infiltration, because there is a pretty good size high water table in that area along Chatterton and through that area, as you can see by the county drain that runs through there.
Yeah. So these are two different issues.
Yes, two different,
Okay.
but they are both related in that they're sanitary, and they need to happen in addition prior to the next phase. So it will help. That one will definitely, because if we don't do it, we can't fix that problem on Pine Avenue. It has to do this first so it can gravity out.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you.
And if that were only our two, or if that was only the only two problems we had, the sewers would be nice.
Yes, truer words were never spoken, because as each day goes by, there's now 2 have come to light just in the last 6 months.
No, unfortunately, you're correct. They don't get any cheaper to fix either, or to rebuild.
No, other than this Francisco one, I am very fortunate. Those are favorable numbers that I'm seeing right now. So that's it's a very welcome surprise.
Nice to see. Anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we did have a motion support, so all those in favor say aye. And opposed would be a negative sign. See none, the motion is passed. Thank you very much. Looks like you moved forward with that bid then. Thank you, David. Moving down to H, agreements. We need to consider a resolution authorizing the execution of section 5311 operating contract project authorization with the Michigan Department of Transportation, number 2017-0004/P17, to provide additional operating funds to the transit system from the CARES Funding Act on behalf of the city of, in the amount of $80,658, and to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city of Alma. Your pleasure on this.
Move approval.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion support. Background, Matt or anybody?
I believe, and Retta,
Go ahead.
this is the third, I believe,
Third time.
third CARES Act monies that have become available through this. So this is money from the federal government under the CARES Act to help support transit through the COVID crisis.
Exactly.
Any comments or questions? Brett, did you have a prop? Something you want to present?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, that's a cabinet in the background. I think you had a big cardboard there on your desk.
Yeah.
Your picture's so small, I couldn't make it out there. So anyway, anybody have questions here? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving down to number 2, consideration of a resolution to approve the change order number 1 for the Opera House parking lot project titled PK40 and acknowledging Alma College's direct to vendor payment. Change order number 2 for the additional amount of $36,465.33 due to the city of Alma, and final pay app number 2 in the amount of $40,808.12 towards Excavating LLC to close the project out. Your pleasure on this item.
Move approval.
Support.
We have motion and support. Any color from staff?
Feel like I'm kind of running the bully pulpit tonight.
Seems you're spending all the money, Dave.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. And I'm sorry, because for the next month, you're going to be hearing more from me as well. So anyhow, the change order is like a lot of our construction projects, but this one, the change order is due to when we first removed the parking lot surface, we found some unfavorable soil materials under a good portion of the north. It's the closest parking strip. There was just clay under that. So we removed that to put gravel under there for a good road, for a base under that new asphalt. We also added an additional storm line that we did not plan on doing based on what we were observing for some storm issues there. Number 3 was we found a water main that ran directly through that storm system that was right up at the where it connects to Downey Street. There was a water main that was actually halfway through the storm line. And to try to fix that, what we did was we had to reroute that water main underneath of the storm and to get that out of the way. So those are the reasons for the additional costs on the project.
Hey, any questions for staff? And we didn't know that we put a water main right through the middle of a storm sewer?
No, that's there. I know of 3 specifically. Call it the good old days, but if you were putting in a main, it's like, well, there's a pipe, just whack through it and patch around it. And that was a 12-inch storm line, and it took up a good half of it. So you had about 7 inches worth of drainage as far as freeboard in that thing. And unfortunately, it was at the very bottom of the storm pipe. So in no way, shape, or form was it ideal. And while we're there, we had the road opened up. Let's reroute the thing. So that's what we did. It's kind of like the best laid plans, and then you start going underground, and then you discover that was one of those. So when people say they don't build them like they used to in the good old days, there is some truth to that.
In this case, it's a good thing they don't.
Well, yes. Yeah.
So thank you for fixing it properly. We do appreciate that, and our descendants will appreciate it some way. Although they may not know about it, but they will appreciate not having to pay for it again.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor would be aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Moving down to number 3, consideration of a resolution approving the lease agreement with Centra Healthcare for the rental property at 217 North State. Looks like we need a motion.
Move approval.
Looking for support.
Support.
Okay. Thank you. Motion and support. Right, Eric, it looks like you
Yep.
available. You're volunteering for this?
Yep. Centria, that we've had in this location, is the former Secretary of State office. We moved him over there from the Prospect building, which is the red building to the south of the parking lot there. We did increase the rent at that point when we moved them over. They are paying for the taxes and all their energy, utilities, water. Obviously during COVID, things were a little slow for them this year, and the commission approved spacing out their last few months of this current year's lease, and we're all up to date with them. And we'd like to keep them on for another year. We just extended this, it'd be the same terms for one more year through July 2022.
Okay. Cool. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Those in favor, be an aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be a nay. Like the motion is passed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Moving on down to reports, we have one from the city manager tonight, so entertain a motion to accept his report or to receive his report.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to support. Matt, did you want to give some flavor here?
Definitely like to touch on the information I gave you on the American Rescue Plan and the funding that is going to be coming our way. As so this is part of a very large appropriation from the federal government, $130 billion, direct and flexible aid to the 19,000 local units of government across the country. The very big difference here is even though we are in a situation of still having a pass through the state of Michigan, entitled communities over 50,000 are getting direct money from the federal government. Ours is still going to come as a pass through the state of Michigan, although the different stipulations here that the state of Michigan, once this goes into effect and is approved, the state has 60 days to actually make their first payment to the communities. All estimates that I'm seeing at this point in time is that the city of Elma is going to be in line to be eligible for in the neighborhood of $850,000. That's a substantial amount of money for us to look at. This really doesn't have what I would call a lot of strings attached. There are some provisions for which we can use this money, and really responding to the pandemic, looking at some of the economic impact that's happened. It can be used in many different ways for small business, for individuals within your community. It can be used to look at premium pays as we've gone through the last year of COVID for essential workers. If you look at some of the other aspects that you're saying, the bigger ones that I think a lot of communities are looking at is the idea of that investment that, as we've just spent the first half of the meeting talking with David, into our infrastructure. And we're talking about, at that point, water and sewer and broadband are the actually specified infrastructure that's being spoken of in the law. We're still waiting on more information from Treasury for the actual guidance from Treasury as to how this will work. This is going to move rather quickly. One of the differences too here is you're looking at the timeline is it's a lot of money, but it doesn't have to be spent until December 31st of 2024. So I think there's some substantial planning that needs to be done to look at the community and look across the avenues that we can use this for. How do we best stretch this money long term? One thing to make sure everybody is aware of, as it talks about infrastructure needs, it specifically does state water and sewer. It does not say road funding. So the question came up in a webinar I was on. So I've got to dig up the road to get to the water and sewer. There's no money to repair the road. That is correct at this point in time. All indications are, though, that within the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, the federal government will be coming out with a road funding bill that may deal more with the actual structures of the road surface. So that's really the next one to look at. What I'd like to do is talking with staff is to get some substantial input. This just came out within the last week. And really we weren't knowing anything about the numbers until the last 5 days, is to start to put some projects out that we think are substantial enough to bring back to you for input. And I'm not sure if you're hearing from folks. This is getting a lot of attention as to what people may be talking about. We have some things in our mind, but I think there's some different ways that we can utilize this that can really benefit this community long term. And we want to make sure that we're fully exploring this. One of the issues that you do look at when it comes to this, even though they're saying you have until 2024 to spend the money, and obviously I think it's extremely important that we plan this out and are methodical in our decision-making process, is I think we're all anticipating a jump in inflation when you look at these prices, when you look at the money that's went out. So the longer we wait to do these projects, the more they may cost. The secondary part will be contractors and who's available to do a lot of this work over time, and what are their is going to do during these things to see what we can go. So I would like to see that we could get something planned out here within the next 45 to 60 days, that we would have a good idea so that this is planned out and the community has a very good idea on what we're looking at spending on and what are those projects. So I know we have a lot that are in the can already. We need to look at what funding is already available for those so we're not duplicating, or are there ways we can stretch our dollars by making decisions differently. So But I really think until Treasury comes out with their exact guidance, I hate to start down a path and then Treasury comes out with a guidance that throws you off as to where we are. But I welcome any input if there's some ideas or people that you've talked to within this community that you think are ways that we can start to look to explore, because it really is going to have to be a methodical planning process for us to get there. So this is about as substantial as communities have seen in years. So this is a great opportunity for us to do something really good for this community.
Absolutely. And 2024 is going to come faster than you can imagine. And $800,000 is not going to go nearly as far as we would like to hope.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody a project popped in your head right away as we started talking, but there, again, that's going to have to be vetted out to see really what are those projects. I think the fact that we did a pretty good job, and when we talked about it a month or so ago, when we talked about the priorities that have been set by this commission and with staff, we've got a pretty good idea of 4 or 5 areas that we know we've set as priorities. And I think that's a really, again, you show when your priorities were, those decisions based on the priorities that we've set. And we have a really good basis of that we'll be able to find really good projects for this. But more will be coming. And I just say you're going to hear a lot of pressure because you're going to see a lot of things coming out of this that people getting going. And I understand that, but I think putting a 60-day plan on making sure that we've vetted these things out properly is the way to go about it. So.
Sounds good. Comments or questions from anyone?
This will continue to get more and more attention, I think, for you. I can tell you this, it's blown up my email. There are vendors out there that have all kinds of ways that they can help you spend this money. So they know it's there and they definitely have really good ideas. We'll continue to vet that out.
Okay.
The other big issue I think that I think we have to discuss, and it kind of came up even before the meeting earlier in the meeting, is the being allowed to have the virtual meetings without any reason is going to expire here at the end of this month on March 31st. That's going to sunset. And so we have seen some of the new mandates that have come out from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, where as of right now, indoor gatherings are limited to 25 people. The hard part when you're doing a public meeting, such as we do, is you never know how many people may show up at the meeting. And so I do think that anticipator, I haven't seen anything that's saying that this is really going to change substantially to the size yet. I think we're still a long way. And I do not think that there is any movement lobbying really hard for it to happen. But as of right now, it just doesn't seem that we're going to be able to continue to do it exactly this way. So.
Well, I know you use the term, having a not in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting without any reason.
Yeah.
But there is a reason. We're still in the middle of a pandemic here. I mean,
and
it seems to me that there truly is a reason for this. We're not doing this for sport.
The other part you could be, because one of the changes with MDHHS within this act is that you can have local reason of declaring an emergency. So if the county had still been in the state of emergency or anything like that happens, then we could still, that's the reason that they're looking for, that there is still something like that. So I suspect as we get closer to the 31st, we're going to get a lot more guidance too. MML has really been on top of this, trying to get this extended. It just, I think as we've reached this point, people have said, no, we're going to have these meetings somehow, some way. And I don't think there was any thought to the process that says most of us have small commission chambers that we can't space people and do a lot of these things in that manner. And you think about it, the library really isn't that big. If you, number one, you're taking 7 of you, myself already, there's 8 people that are already there. Sarah's got to be there. There's 9. Aaron, if he's running the thing, there's and already would take almost half of the available seats and something like that. So we'll have to continue to work on that and see. So just
what
know
is their problem with
this and get you the information as quick as we can.
What is their problem with allowing us to continue this? Why is this such a bad thing?
You'd have to ask the folks who are done moving legislation, I guess. That's the issue. It really is.
Okay.
And there's been a strong lobby, Raj, just so you know. I mean, there's been a very strong lobby from MML and some other organizations that have been pushing. So we'll see. Although the last update I got, it didn't sound like much was going to change by next week, but we'll see. kind of mapping out a budget schedule that we'd be looking at for you. And one of the biggest things was that I would really be asking for, we need the prep time to get to April 20th, which is the date by charter that we have to bring your budget presentation. So I would really like to be able to call for a special meeting on that night, as opposed to trying to squeeze something in on April 13th. I would love to have the extra week for us to work on that so that we can bring you something at that time. And then a couple of the other dates are when we would have some of the special meetings for review. And then really the last one would be a tentative date, May 18th, depending on what has gone on in the review, if we need that, and we should get there. So I just tried to map it out so we can start to get some things on our schedule over the next 2 months to get there.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
And then the last thing, just I actually have it on the agenda too, but might be worth, I guess that's okay. Greg, it's on the agenda, so I'll just wait until we get there. That's probably appropriate.
Okay. I did have one question that came to mind when you talked about budget. I know in the fire board, we talked about earlier for the townships. Have we got some firm numbers to them at this point?
To the townships that have them,
Townships?
fire board standpoint, they have them. Yes.
They've got that then. Okay.
Yeah, they got those, and that's actually been approved. So,
Okay,
yes.
great. Anybody else have questions? Okay, hearing none, we do have a motion support. So all those in favor of receiving Matt's report?
Aye.
Yay. Opposed to be a nay? Motion is carried. We have received your report. We'll move down to unfinished business, which is discussion of voluntarily extending paid sick time under the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act until June 30, 2021, as provided for in the December 27, 2020 stimulus bill and the January 12, 2021 Alma City Commission resolution. This is up for discussion. So Matt, I presume you're going to lead this discussion.
Yes. As you remember, we had been required under the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act from last year to allow for 80 hours, up to 80 hours of sick time for our employees to be paid for those, and there's the 5 COVID reasons that existed. That sunsetted on December 31st of 2020. And I came back to you on the January 12th meeting as we were still in the midst of COVID, still things going on. It was a voluntary ask and that out to the end of March. And so we could continue again, taking a look at where are we at a certain point in time. Well, we're almost to March 31st, and that's crazy to feel how fast time keeps going through everything. So I'm really coming back to get your input, your opinion on what you think. Roger, you mentioned it a few minutes ago. We're still in the midst of a pandemic here. Is there anything on the commission's thought process that would be if we look to extend this another time? Again, this would be adding no more hours to that. Everybody had an 80-hour bank when this started. If it's been used, that amount has been subtracted of what we're eligible for, or what they were eligible for and what we were obligated to. And so we would really be making no adjustments to that, other than if you choose, or you felt it was in the best interest of our employees to extend that out. But I thought I needed to bring that to your attention as this is expiring here next week.
I'm not sure if there's other corporations that are still doing that. I don't know what I honestly don't know what our institution is doing, but I haven't heard that a lot of institutions are doing. Have you heard other cities?
It's funny, Michelle, you say that, because if I remember back when this was first, everybody suddenly went, oh my gosh, this is expiring. What are we going to do? I have not heard much. Okay. There hasn't been much out there. Most folks that did extend it, did it till the end of March from there. I'd like to say we've been pretty fortunate. We haven't had a whole lot of folks who've had to utilize some of this, but it was there. So I'm not understand that if we don't extend it and we have those, then it is up to people to use their personal time, of which they do have those benefits. So their personal sick time and all of those things.
So what would be possible negatives of extending it? I mean, if it's not adding any additional time, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm leaning towards thinking we would extend it, but I don't know what the negatives of why you would maybe not want to.
there's no money for it, right? I mean, we
Right,
didn't
there
receive
is
any
no-
money to do this,
exactly.
so the negative would be that instead of somebody burning their PTO days or their normal days, they would get this extended day if they qualified.
Okay, okay. I thought you meant that we were going to allow them to use their personal sick time. But you're saying
Oh, no, they would,
the
yeah.
original money covered it as opposed to, yeah, I
And we
understand now.
we
'Cause I-
received, and so you know, we have not received either. I mean, I think when COVID started a year ago, we were all wondering if there would be money available for those types of things. That was mandated upon us without receiving anything back for those
Right.
hours. So,
So uncommon.
and I think it was the right thing to do. I think it was the right thing ethically to do to make sure we were protecting our people, and I think it's worked really well. The question is, how long do you continue?
Right.
This?
Yeah, got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Matt, do you have an idea how many, you said we've done very little utilization. You don't have any specific hours?
I can get you that and get it. We've had, from a sickness standpoint, it's the contact tracing that ends up utilizing this more. And again, we have 35% of our staff now that does have the availability to work from home. I mean, through the grant money that we've had, and we have had some folks who have been contact traced and been off, and they didn't use the 80 hours, any of their hours in this anyway, because they did work from home. So that's a real good portion of the work from home, and we've been able to do that. So it would be, it does get limited as to who is able to use this or who would even be eligible to use this, because we do have, like I say, almost 35% of the staff now that can work from home if they've been contact traced. Obviously, if they're sick, you know, they've been able to utilize this.
Do you have any idea if the employees have been vaccinated?
No.
Because that, you know, if you have 80% or something by the end of the month, you're in pretty good shape. I mean, in terms
A
of
lot of our employees are just reaching a point of eligibility too. I do know that. They've been in, a lot of people are in the queue and are just now starting to get the phone calls. So
it seems to be a big availability is going to go up substantially, supposedly next month. So
the question really is, because there is no funding for these hours. And in December, I'd actually let staff know that we were not going to be granting the emergency sick time anymore either. And then you folks were kind enough to do it for 3 months. But I think at some point, the question is, how long do you keep going? There really is. There is a question of that.
Matt, do you have a extension time in mind that you're looking for? Or?
I'm just, and again, I'll be honest, I don't have I have opinions, but of course, but I don't know that we're even at a point that we've been doing them 3 months. If we were to do anything, I would assume we would do it again in another quarter for a 3 month.
Sure.
But I would really, I'm interested in your input to say, this is something that the 7 of you will have to decide if this is something that we really should be doing. Greg's right. There is no funding for this anymore at this point, or any period now, and you've already extended it once. The question becomes, do we continue to do that?
I guess.
And to me, there's always the mixed emotions on these things. I mean, you want to help people out as much as you can, but you give these extra hours to somebody because they qualify under this COVID, but somebody else gets a severe case of the flu and they're out for a week and they get none of that. They have to eat up their own vacation time or their own sick time.
I mean,
so where's the fairness on these things?
Yeah, I would be interested though in possibly extending it another 30 or 60 days based on the fact that city employees, other than emergency, like law enforcement, a lot of city employees have not been eligible for the vaccine. And so it's kind of I don't know. I mean, I know you said a whole quarter, but could we do it for a 30 days?
I'm just saying that because that's what we did first. It was just an easy when we did the first one.
I just, looking at the fact that there has been a big portion of your population that's probably not fallen into the eligibility yet. And I think, what is it, April 5th, they're opening it kind of wide open for everybody. I mean, I don't know. That's just one thought that kind of goes through my mind, that now whether or not people take the vaccine's another story, but
then that's their personal choice. So.
Exactly.
Right.
Matt, do you know how many cases or how many people are isolating or quarantining now?
Right now, Brookson, I don't believe we have anybody in right now.
Okay.
We do have one employee with symptoms, so that's off right now, but she'll return on Friday.
So that would still be within the time frame. Because we have until the
I
30th.
guess personally, I would go with Audra's suggestion. I like the idea of maybe kicking it down the road 30 days and, talking about it again, or at least giving people the opportunity. That would give them a window of opportunity to get vaccinated.
And I will say this, I think one of the early concerns where we first talked about, if you go way back to even when we started granting the time to start with, there was that concern of, oh my gosh, everybody's going to have an issue and be off. And we have not had, in my opinion, people abusing it. It's been used properly. I don't think most people even think about it that much until they're in the position where they need to. I don't think it's been a forethought for people. And again, I do think that we've had a lot of folks who, if they had not, I shouldn't say a lot, that gives a wrong impression, but we've had people who have been quarantined due to contact tracing who've continued to work because of the investment we've also made in making sure that folks can work from home. So if the 30-day window fits, I think that some of the points you've made are very valid. That gives us that window for folks who want to be vaccinated would have that opportunity.
I think that's kind of a good idea to just kind of go month to month on this. And if the end of 30 days, again, nobody has used it, and maybe it's time to bag it. But if there's an increased activity in the next 30 days, then maybe we want to do it for another 30 days. But let's just kick it down the road for a month at a time.
I think the nice thing about going through, let's say April 30th, the end of the month, is that once that vaccine window is open and then you have that 2-week, where you're not quite safe or whatever. Well, actually, that would mean we'd want to do 60 days because you have to get your second shot.
Unless you get the Johnson & Johnson. No, it's only
We
one.
probably can't control that, though. I think you got to get whatever becomes available.
I know. That would be the preferred one.
Right. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean,
I'm fine with 30. You can always add 30 more if you want to.
that's true.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Comments?
I would be
Ending
willing-
at 30 days sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be willing to make that motion to extend it. Do we say till the end of April or do we say 30 days from now?
No, I would say, because this doesn't end until March 31st, so I would say until April. Now we can put a date down at April 30th.
Perfect. April 30th. Perfect.
I'll support that.
Okay, we have a motion and support on the floor. Are there any additional comments or questions? Hearing none. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be a nay. The motion is carried. Thank
Thank you
you.
for that discussion. Thank you.
So that's, I guess that's it. So that was the discussion item. Next up is consideration of a resolution approving the donation of the wastewater treatment plant's spectrophotometer to Alma College. I don't know how bad I butchered that, but David, you want to correct me?
I'm not going to argue it. Spectrophotometer, whichever you want to call it. Either way.
Sure, that thing.
Spectrophotometer, who knows? Either way.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, we have motion support. Any comments or questions? Now, Dave, I know you told us about this before, but just for the audience that may be watching this that didn't see the last meeting, you want to go over what that kind of a piece of equipment is and why we're not using it, or why we've got this additional piece of equipment that we're willing to donate?
Background is this is a 40-plus-year-old piece of equipment, and what it does is it checks for metals in the wastewater material, checks how the amount of metals and what type they are. We have not used this piece of equipment since at least the late 90s, early 2000s, because the fact of the matter is it's cheaper for us to send sampling out than it is to even have staff time to run this machine anymore. So it's made itself obsolete. Just to put it into context, to run this machine takes someone several hours to run that. So you take into account the hours that you pay them, as opposed to for the cost of send out the samples, and that only takes one sample a month. an additional reason why we wouldn't use it is the standards have changed. So even if we were to use this again, it's probably not high tech enough to read to the levels that are required for, used to be MDEQ, now Eagle requirements. And one question was asked at the last meeting was how much this piece of equipment cost back when we bought it. To our research, if back in those days, we would have paid anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 for this. If you want to know the market price for this thing now is, if you could find someone who is willing to buy it, it's very difficult to put it out there. Think of it as in terms of a 40-year-old computer, or anything of that sort. You might donate it to somebody to computer, learn how to, lack of a better term, I hate to use that word, play on it. But the idea with the college is we could donate it to them. They can use this as an additional learning tool to find out how to use it, how one of these work. They do currently have one that they're using, and they very much like the idea of using another one. So in terms of us, if you're used to using Windows, this would be like firing up a 40-year-old computer and using DOS. So that's the best way that, in the layest way that I can explain that to you, but there is a use for it on the educational front, as a learning tool for students. An additional one, and number two, is to also see how these work. And so for that reason, it does have some value, but if anybody's out there going to buy it, there's nobody out there that would really buy this.
So we're
Okay.
basically giving them a slide rule instead of a computer, right?
Yes, but they're very much interested in the idea of utilizing this. So they like the idea of it, and it means more to them than having it sit on our shelf or our countertop, lack thereof.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Any additional comments? I believe we did have a motion of support. So all those in favor of making the donation would be an aye.
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 Opposed would be a nay. Looks like the motion is carried. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. It'd be good to get that off your shelf, out of the building, taking up space, and hopefully the college students can make good use of it. So, moving on to new business. Are there any items that we need to cover under new business tonight? Nothing on the agenda, obviously, but hey, with that, we'll move to appropriations. Does anybody want to make a motion to pay the bills?
Move to pay.
Motion to pay the bills.
Okay, motion to pay the bills. Do we have support? I didn't catch it.
Nick did.
Okay, so we've got motion support. Questions? Who has questions? I had a couple things, if nobody else does. Just curiosity. On page 34 from AIS, there's an item listed as inner tube for front plow at $335. I just wondered why a plow needed an inner tube.
Front end loader. Then that's why
Front end loader, okay.
that would explain if you remember back in the good old days when we had it tall, we were trying to push it off the state trunk line and some of our other wind prone areas.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the answer on that question. Another one was the City Tech training for $1,200.
That's
I'm sure that
our,
was specific to some technology.
that's our, all of our internal systems, our work order flow, all of those things in inventory that go through Public Works. It's a commitment that we need to make to use ours to the very best of our abilities at this point in time. We've had
Okay.
City Tech for a very long time, and that training, this will be the first time in quite some years that we've actually trained really to the system.
And that is what I actually wanted to bring up, is I wanted to commend you for purchasing training for the staff and helping them to use the technology that we buy as efficiently as possible and get the most possible use out of it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
This
it's a lot
has
of money
been a
to buy
debated
this.
one for a long time, but the reality is I think we now understand a little better that it is an essential part of what we're trying to do, and we need to use it as such.
Absolutely. I fully support that. So thank you for pushing staff in that direction.
Okay.
Then the last item I had was $1,200 worth of copy paper. I thought we were going paperless.
Oh, there's still there's still a lot of copy that runs. We have come a long ways. I will tell you that, in being paperless, and a lot better. But I don't think we purchase it nearly as often as we used to, but that when you buy it, you get what you need and put it in there. But it is, we're getting better. I will tell you, we're getting better at not copying everything. We keep getting better every month.
I would encourage that to continue. That was more of a needle because I too work in an office that in theory is paperless, but
Yes,
in reality they are not. So
I would tell you we're a lot better, but there's still some of those things that just feel better hanging on to.
I get it. All right. Anybody else? I believe we did have a motion of support to pay the bills. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, be nay. Looks like it's passed. Commissioner comments. Let's start with Danny tonight. Let's go first.
Just enjoying the weather, stay and get out and do those things and see people in town and staying safely, of course, and going in and continue to see restaurants and eating outside. Obviously, the last couple of days have been nice. Hopefully, it stays. I don't know if it will, but just glad to be a part of it and glad to be here. And it's been interesting too. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Danny. Roxanne.
I get my second COVID shot tomorrow, so I'll be glad when that's all completed. I had horrible symptoms with the first one, and I'm hoping that's because I had COVID and that maybe tomorrow's will be much better because I had symptoms with the vaccination that I didn't have when I actually had COVID. So hoping that means it's working great and that we're all on the road to recovery. So have a good week. Enjoy the weather. It's great. I'm back on my porch, so I'm happy.
All right. Well, we share that good wish for you as well, Roxanne. Audra, you had a different experience, but if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, good luck, Roxanne. I hope that your first one, you already had the symptoms and you're done with it. So and actually we had a coworker that was the same thing. She had a bad first one and she was fine the second. So I just want to share, and I know we have another meeting before this, but April 15th at Child Advocacy in the parking lot, we're having the Nom Nom Ninja food truck. They were at the hospital a couple weeks ago, if you caught them. It's excellent, delicious Japanese hibachi in a wrap, and then Max and Emily's cheesecake. And we're doing this because they are going to be giving some of the profit back to Child Advocacy. Able to fundraise all year because of COVID. This is just a creative way that we're going to be getting a little bit of fundraising dollars. So we're spreading the word on that. We figured our parking lot's a perfect location, close to the hospital and Masonic and everyone that works downtown. So hopefully it'll be a nice day to walk down and get some food from the food truck. The only other thing is I did go, I think it was last Thursday, and I toured with Mark and Kendra, Elma PD, the police station. And I'm grateful that you guys passed the renovation to get started because I was pretty appalled by what I saw down there. I don't want to get into it too much, but I think it's a shame that our officers have been working in those conditions with the mold and the exposed wires and terrible chairs that you have the backs ripped out of. And I could go on and on. I actually took some pictures I was going to share with you guys. And then I decided I'd just talk instead. So, but I did encourage Mark to reach out to each of you, the commissioners, if you haven't been in to take a tour to see before they fix it all up. I think you'd be quite interested to see what's going on down there. So if you get a chance, get in touch with Mark or Kendra and stop in and check that out. So hopefully it's going to be beautiful when it's all done and they can at least take a shower and have a little bit of a nicer work environment. So thank you to the commissioners that passed that at the last meeting. I'm sorry I missed it, but appreciate that. So just enjoy the weather and have a great week, everyone.
Thank you, Audra. And in our defense, we did talk about that project for 20 years before this. So it's not like we weren't aware of it.
And I've been harassing for the last year and a half about it. So trying to get it going. Yep, trying to get it going.
Yeah, finally making things happen. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Michelle.
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Roger.
There we go. Yeah, just enjoy this. I guess we're going to lose some of it tonight for a couple days, but I think the worst is over. Continue to support local business as much as you can. They still need it, but if you're thinking of something, eat out, consider there before you think of the places that are not locally owned and operated. So support them as much as you can. That's it.
Good point. Thank you, Roger. Oh,
Not much to add. I get my second COVID shot March 31st. And Roxanne, what I'm hearing,
note.
I don't know how to make a day for somebody.
Yes. Sarah. Nothing to add?
Since Roger brought it up earlier, I will just remind everyone that we have a special school election coming up on May 4th, Tuesday, May 4th. There are actually only 2 proposals on the ballot. They have to do with Mid-Michigan College. I shouldn't say only 2. There are 2 proposals on the ballot. They have to do with Mid-Michigan College. So we are now, this week we'll be starting to send out AV ballots for the people who request them. So just a reminder, I did update the website, but I just want to throw that out there for everybody. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And that's a great point. Might that we turned down in the past. Only this time they're not doing it by county or not by the entire RESD school district. They're doing it by individual school districts. So in this case, Alma may pass it and say St. Louis, Ithaca, or some other school districts may not. But if we pass it in Alma, then we will be in the program or not. I guess it could go either way, obviously. But it is just by school district. It's not by the entire RESD 2 counties set up like this time.
Oh, good. Good.
Because I believe last time, if I remember right, Alma did pass it. And I don't really remember anybody else, but overall it failed. Is that your recollection as well, Sarah?
Honestly, I can't remember much about the last election.
Well, I would have thought that'd been burned in your mind.
A lot of it, but not that part.
Okay.
The main problem was the two pieces. The first one was to vote for it. Do you agree with it? And the second one was to fund it. And everybody thought it was a great idea, but nobody wanted to pay for it. So
First time that's happened, huh?
isn't that strange?
Yes. Okay, Matt.
The only thing I'd just like to remind everybody out in their yards, but yard waste pickup doesn't start until April 5th. We'll start coming around but everybody's getting an early jump. I know we're all anxious, but we'll start that on April 5th.
Okay, if anybody runs out of things to do, they can always rake my yard too. So I haven't done mine yet. I have nothing further to add, so I thank everybody. No, we need public comments. Is there any members of the public who would like to somehow make yourself known to Aaron and he will permit you in the meeting or give you a voice? Is there anybody out there?
I am looking. We had one member of the public in attendance earlier, but it looks like they have disconnected, Greg.
I guess we chased them away. So with that, we'll say goodnight to everyone. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for tuning in and have a great evening.
Will we adjourn? Yes.
All those in favor? We have support. I need support. I say support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you, Roger, for catching me.